Welcome back, everybody. This week on the Fixed Ops Mastermind powered by OEM Interactive, we are talking visionary leadership. We have three guests with us here today, Veronica Dunford, Randy Noel, and Heather Parody. And before we get started, a big thank you to our show sponsor. This week is brought to you by IntelliCheck. Stop guessing about your place in the market. Utilize IntelliCheck's competitive pricing analysis reports to compare your service prices to those of your competitors. Fine-tune your pricing strategy, highlight your favorite prices, and foster trust with both new and existing customers. Visit IntelliCheck.com today to get started. Thank you very much to IntelliCheck. And so today's show, as always, we'll break this up into three segments. First segment, we're going to talk about what leadership is. And second segment will be, how do you see things differently? And third, we will bring it home with qualities of a visionary leader, which I'm sure we will cover a bunch of those as we go through, but that's how we will wrap it all up. And so start this out with, other than the typical set of qualities for a leader, and some things that we talked a little bit about before we came on air, of getting people to do work, getting people to do good work, performance, that type of things. How do you envision leadership differently than most people do? And Veronica, I'll start with you on the end there.
Oh, pick on the new girl. I appreciate that, Dave. Actually, that's a great question. Being that I've been in a lot of different industries and leadership roles in my life and in my career, I've found personally that I have a different leadership style than most. I bring on a totally eclectic personality types in the business that I run, especially today. And I empower each and every one of them to make their own decisions. I'm not a micromanager. I'm definitely not the type that makes them answer to me every day. This is the common goal, the common theme. And I want your ideas. I want to see how you want to get to that goal. From the outside in, people are usually kind of like, and you think this weird group is going to get you there? And in the end, we always do. We come together as a team, we grow as a team, we play as a team. And at the end of the day, yes, I'm one of the majority owners, but I think I look for the best qualities in each person that I choose. And I can see how they all fit together. So it works. It works really well. And I think this last month has shown that our leadership and our goals were met. For those that don't know, I own Women in Automotive, and we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary and had one of the absolute most successful conferences in the automotive industry in the year.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Can't hear you. Dave, we can't hear you.
Being able to put those different personalities together, and being able to see that, right? To see that those very different people can work together, and not just work together, but successfully complete the tasks that are needed. That is so important. And Heather, how about you?
Leaders. I've been on a mission lately to reframe how we view creatives and seeing them as leaders. So my show is called Unconventional Leaders, and I get a lot of people saying, sending me pitches, and they're like talking about the 10 steps of leadership in corporate and all of this stuff. I'm like, yo, you didn't really read the description. It's unconventional. These are people who you would never see as a leader, but there are so much leadership opportunities, things for us to learn from the outside of the box leader, which I see as the creative person, the person who tells stories, who thinks outside of the box and may have not the traditional skills you would see as a leader, with a certain personality type and organizational skills or whatever, but somebody who can get to the root and the core of something that's going on and do it in a way that everyone can accept it and hear it, which really comes through storytelling, I believe. If you have some issue, sometimes going directly into it, people get defensive. But when a creative can come in, a storyteller, they can shape a narrative where everyone feels seen and heard and they understand it in a new way. So I'd say leaders, man, I go to creatives, I go to storytellers, writers, artists, musicians. These are leaders. And I think we need to start taking that work, that contribution more seriously and celebrating it because they're the connectors.
Yeah, leader is not always defined by your title within the company, right? That's
Right.
there. I've worked with many people that didn't have that manager, director, chief, anything title,
Right.
but they were definitely a leader within that company. All right, Randy, we'll round this one out with you.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be on your show again. I think I did this with you a couple of years ago when I was at McLaren. So
Yes, sir.
yeah, it's good to be back, and I'm glad that you invited me back to join these two visionary leaders, Veronica and Heather. So for me, I think my first leadership role was in 1993, aging myself a little bit, at a Chrysler Dodge Jeep dealership, and I had no idea what I was doing. And so I looked to other leaders to see, what do I like in that leader? What would I want, to try to emulate in that person's leadership style? And it took me a long time to kind of figure out how I could be a leader. But really, for me, it's just who inspired me as a leader. What did I like about them? And then I tried to emulate some of those qualities. And the primary thing for me, it's helping other people achieve their goals. That's what leadership is to me. So I always tell my team, I'll help you with the vision. I'll help you understand what we're trying to do. But I will never tell you how to do it. That's up to you guys. Everyone on my team has been hired because they have all the smarts. They have all the skills, and so my job really is to remove roadblocks for them and just make sure that we all kind of stay rowing in the same direction. But like Veronica said, micromanaging doesn't work for me, doesn't work for her, rarely works at all. So I just like to make sure this is what we're trying to accomplish. I'll give you the tools that you need to do it. But beyond that, if you need help, please come and ask. So
I think a good rule of thumb is treat people the way you want to be treated, because you're going to thrive if you're given the same rope, if you give people the same rope that you wish you had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think
removing those roadblocks is huge for people, right? And Randy, you made the statement of your team members were all hired for a reason, right? I used to say the same thing to my team when I was running stores. Like, I hired you for a reason. It wasn't because I didn't think you could do this. So when it's time to make a decision, I trust that you are going to make the right decision, that you're going to do the right thing for that customer.
Yeah, and 100%.
And so with that, and Randy, you mentioned while you were talking that you emulated some people as when you were a young leader. So let's talk about who were some of your mentors or heroes as you were learning to be a leader, and maybe that happened long before you were actually in a leadership position. But Heather, let's start with you on that one.
Wasn't ready. You said Randy, man. You threw a curveball at me. When I started learning about leadership, I felt very uncomfortable because I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me or acted like me. I'm a little quirky. I wear Converses and say y'all all the time, and that's who I am. I'm I've never been a very polished person. I'm very earthy, if that makes sense. So when I started looking into leadership and, you go down the rabbit hole, Jim Rohn was my entry drug, started listening to a whole bunch of his stuff and these old, what used to be cassette tapes into CDs. And it was just a really great content, but it was packaged in a way that really made it hard for me to understand and consume. And it made me feel very isolated because I saw a bunch of rich, middle-aged white dudes talking about leadership. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love rich, middle-aged white dudes. Y'all are doing great work, right? But in my early 20s, when I started down the personal development rabbit hole, I was like, this isn't me. I'm not going to work a corporate job. I was going down building my own business. I didn't feel comfortable, and I had to get over that a little bit and understand that I had my own prejudice against what leaders were supposed to look like. And it really was a reflection of my own insecurity of me putting myself down. And so I had to get rid of that and lay that down, but then also see it as an opportunity to start another narrative and conversation around what leaders can look like and how leadership is packaged in different ways. So the first leaders I saw were what I just explained. And I learned so much. I'm forever indebted to the people who wrote books like, Seth Godin and even Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and some of these people who laid the groundwork that, hey, your life can be different if you take ownership of it. But also, too, I've been very encouraged by younger leaders, Gen Z, people who are out there using their voice in unconventional ways and maybe don't fit the mold of what a traditional leader looks like, but they understand that leadership is simply just influence and anyone can do that. So, Dave, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's who got me hooked in.
All right. Veronica.
I just knew you were going to come back to me on this one. Well, for me, actually, I started out in different industries. They've always been male dominated. I think that's probably why I was drawn to empowering women now that I'm semi-retired. However, in my early years, my mentors were men. I took a lot from Tony Hsieh. I worked on a project with him. If anyone remembers Tony, God rest his soul, but he was amazing, very visionary, knew everything about everything when it came to customer service and the customer experience. Delivering Happiness, if no one's read his book.
Yeah,
one of the best you could recommend to someone about how to treat the customer. And prior to that, just in business, always challenging me. One of my early on bosses, then business partners, Jim France, he was absolutely amazing. Still is, good friend, him. And then, I move into automotive. I never really had female friends, save a few, until I got into automotive. Once I got into automotive, I absolutely made some of the best friends and mentors I've ever made in my life.
Wow.
I found that there were so many women that were like me at the time, that worked so hard to get where I was, that I was abrasive. And I felt like I wasn't worthy of female friends. Mm-hmm. And then those women that I became friends with changed my perspective. And they are some of the best friends I have. Kathy Gilbert, Bobby Heron, Lisa Copeland is a wonderful mentor. It's just phenomenal. And still the men, though. I mean, my boss of 15 years is one of my best friends, Mike Trasati. And then to give me the perspective on look at the talent, not the title, when building a team, Dan Moore, if you read his book, one of his favorite saying is, we're just a band of misfit toys trying to reach a goal. And it works. We all have different talents. You know, the one thing with women in automotive, we are not employees, we're all volunteers. And we do great things together. And we do great things for this industry. But everyone comes together and donates their time and their efforts. So obviously we're doing something right if we can do that.
She makes me want to switch to automotive industry, man. Veronica, you just
Come on over, Heather. We'll take you.
sold, man. That was good.
It is a band of great people, isn't it? That's for sure. Randy, we started this with you, and then I switched away from you. So
Trick,
mentors and
man.
heroes.
Yeah, no worries. I was happy to listen to Heather and Veronica. So for me, again, some of those folks who have inspired my leadership style, I guess some of my mentors, heroes, Carl Sewell, he's a car dealer there in Texas. He wrote a great book way back in the early 90s, Customers for Life. So I took a lot from
And his
that.
nephew, Colin. He's
Sorry?
amazing.
Yeah.
I said, and his nephew, Colin, he's incredible.
Yeah, so his philosophies really kind of set the course for me in automotive after sales leadership. I started with Carl Sewell, and then later on, Alan Mulally, when he took over Ford and saved them basically during the 2008 financial crisis, and made the Ford the only company that didn't have to take financial assistance from the government because he was just a genius at running that business. So I took a lot from Alan Mulally. And more recently, I'm inspired by Mary Barra and what she's done at General Motors. I've had a couple of other women bosses over my career that were inspirational. And, I worked for both during my time at Mazda, two of the most amazing women in automotive, Nicole Keenan and Maria Richards. And they taught me a lot, about how to be a better person and a better leader and a better listener. So, and originally, I guess it was my father. He was the one that got me in this business. He was a parts manager at a Porsche Audi dealership and hired me when I was 18 years old. And I learned a lot from him. Primarily, the thing I learned from him was show up every single day, give it 100% every single time, and just never miss a day. So, those are kind of some of the folks that kind of helped me along the way.
That's great. Three great journeys there with different people. Veronica, I found it very interesting that you said that you didn't have a lot of women friends until you came into automotive, and yet automotive obviously is certainly far from being at the level that it needs to be with women in the business. What do you think it was that bonded you to the women that are in automotive?
Great question, Dave. Ironically, we talked about this at our conference this year, and there's two types, probably three, but two types of women in the automotive industry when you get to our level. There's those that have had to fight the fight on their own, and they feel like they're on an island, so they don't really want to let anyone in because they're afraid that someone's going to knock them down or they're going to take their spot. And then there's those that work together. They band together. Unfortunately, when I first started,
Man, we lost Veronica for a minute. All right.
Bandwidth issue.
Yep. Well, she's leaving us. She's leaving us hanging there. She's got a great point to make.
At least she looks good the way she froze there. So sometimes you have
right.
like one eye open or.
Most people do not freeze. And most people do not freeze in flattering poses, right? So,
Right.
All right. While we wait for Veronica to come back, we can take a quick break for our quote of the week. That is, the visionary starts with a clean sheet of paper and reimagines the world. That is from Malcolm Gladwell, and that is brought to you by Parts Edge. And so, well, I was hoping Veronica would be back when we came back, but so we'll with that we'll move into to segment 3. And as the quote just said, reimagining the world. So how do we see things differently as visionary leaders? And Heather, you also are a COO to a fractional COO to visionary leaders.
Mhm.
Right? And that that has to be a bit. Sorry, just hey, Veronica's back.
I don't even know what happened there. Everything in the house went black, so I'm sorry.
All good, all good. So we moved over to how we see things differently, Veronica. But do you remember the point you were making? Because it sounded like you were about to make a great point.
Oh, I was. I'm sorry.
The
Yes.
two different types of women that came up in automotive.
Yes. And then I think I was at the part where I was saying that, then there's the women that like to or want or need the support because they actually get what they need when they're in a group. And that's the foundation that we're building with Women in Automotive is
Oh,
sounds like Texas is getting some more storms. All right, now we will move to how we see things differently, and we'll wait for Veronica to come back again. So
I do not know what is happening. There's
this is why it's a live show, Veronica. You have to be able to roll with the punches here.
Live is not easy. So I commend you for this, Dave. Like live is another animal.
It definitely is.
Mhm.
Keeps me on my toes here. So as visionary leaders, how is it that you stay ahead of what's going on in the industry? How do you anticipate future shifts in needs? And Heather, I was mentioning that you're a fractional COO to visionary leaders,
Mhm.
which just being a COO to a visionary leader has to be difficult. But as a fractional COO, I would assume that would mean that it's maybe some short-term things where you're working with those visionary leaders, and so you've got
Yeah.
to be able to get up to speed quickly.
Yeah. So we keep around 10-ish at a time. And we have some longer term engagements and some shorter term, but it's really required uh, a lot of flexibility and detachment away from the way you think things should go and being willing back to the creative again, back to the reimagine again, to ask how will this work as opposed to if it's going to work, how do I make this happen? How do we pull what we have and see this as an opportunity? It's taken I did a you do all these tests and weird things. I did a real deep dive last year on my unique gifts, and one of them was translation, being able to translate things in a new way, and then also too to be able to hold a lot of energy and not be overwhelmed with it. So it works well with being a fractional COO. But I noticed with visionary leaders, a lot of them, not everyone, really struggle to translate what they're seeing into action and what that looks like for the day to day. And so again, I'm gonna keep beating this drum, but back to the storytelling piece and back to the really being able to become an excellent communicator in a creative way. It's imperative to get anything done because you can have the most amazing elaborate vision and you're spouting off. People are going to feel overwhelmed. They're going to feel confused. They don't take ownership. And so coming in and being able to understand storytelling and translation, I just think is just imperative. And so a lot of my work, you would think of it as a systems operational thing. I see myself as more of a storyteller translator because coming in with a big ass mess, it's just figuring out, okay, how do you not just like build a system, but communicate and get everybody on board And it comes through story.
Mhm.
Story.
That translation piece has to be
100%.
big.
And getting
That,
to the heart and capturing it,
Mhm.
making everybody care.
I know the things that go on in my brain and the what I consider incredible ideas, but to try and make that come out of my mouth as
Yeah.
something usable is often very difficult.
Yep.
Randy, how about you?
So I think for me, some of the things that I think about when I think about, what is a visionary leader going to look like going forward, I think we all rely on tools, all right, and different tools are evolving. And so, for example, here at Zinger Vehicles, we have a lot of smart humans in the building, but then we feed all of their good ideas into this amazing high-tech computer system that Kevin and Lucas Zinger have developed. And then the AI takes over, and so we give it the ideas, and it kind of does that translation for us. It tells us what parts need to look like, what they need to be made of, how much they need to weigh, and so forth. So I think AI will be a very big asset and assistant to us, but it has to start with the humans that have the big ideas, right? So we put the ideas in, and like you said, we have something in our head, but we maybe don't know how to make it come out the mouth. I think AI can help us with that, because what it can do for us is 10,000 iterations in 5 minutes, where something might have taken us, 5 years to develop our process or our style. If we put that big idea into this kind of software system, it can iterate over and over and over again until it comes out with, here's how you ought to say that, Dave. So I think, people looking forward should be open to trying new tools and new ways of getting, from the idea to the translation to the story that Heather was talking about. And so, I'm a big fan of trying new things and not being afraid of new technologies.
Amen.
Yeah, that's great. It's very cool that you're using AI in that way. And obviously there are some people out there that are 1,000% in on AI, and other people that are 1,000% that it's going to take over the world and all of that. And like anything else, there's two sides to a story, and somewhere in the middle typically lies the truth. Right.
Sure.
And to know that you're using AI in that way, in not generating the idea itself, but in bringing that idea to life, is very cool. Veronica, welcome back.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, Dave.
This is what live brings us. So I'll bring you up to speed. So we were talking about how a visionary leader stays ahead of industry trends and how you anticipate future shifts in needs for the team.
Well, I think I didn't get to hear the other answers. But I think for us, for me, I attend a lot of the conferences in our industry, as well as my team does. And we're all from varied backgrounds and companies. So thankfully, we all bring our ideas, our company information, as well as the different products and technologies to the table when we have our meetings and discuss what's best, because we provide that, not only the community for our members, but mentorship on, building their careers, building their leadership skills. And we want to be able to advise when they ask us these questions. So I think just the fact that we all have different perspectives, as well as careers ourselves outside of what we do, is really a game changer for us and is helpful.
It's great. So what I've heard from all of you is that it is never a singular thing, right? Where we're talking about visionary leadership and visionary leaders here, but it is never a singular person that is making these things happen. So let's talk about innovations in training and development, and some of the things that you guys are excited about that are coming around. And Randy, you opened the discussion on with AI, about AI. I think there's a lot of different things that AI can really help with training. I listened to a podcast the other day with I can't think of his first name, but the founder of Khan Academy, and some things that they're doing with AI and in secondary education, and it's amazing the how AI can help really transfer that knowledge in a way that's helpful to the person that's using it. And so, Randy, we'll stick with you on this. What kind of training and development things get you most excited? You're working at a very innovative company, right, with Zinger Vehicles, not your typical car company. So.
No, for sure. It's unique and singularly unique in the entire industry. And so, when I left McLaren, I thought I would never find another brand that inspired me as much as McLaren did. But I have to say, Zinger Vehicles, the way that they design, create, 3D print the parts, assemble the cars, everything here is done completely different than in the rest of the industry. And to me, that's inspirational. And I'd like to take that to, how do we deliver training for, dealership technicians? We have 20 dealers around the world. Do I want to make them all come here to Los Angeles, or can we do some remote, some AI assisted virtual learning? So there's a lot of different, I think, technologies that we can use to make learning and development easier for each of us, but also for all the folks, again, around the world. We're all connected. And in this business, it's a really kind of a small business. So you run into people again and again that are used to doing things the way they've always been done. But then you'll find some that are refreshing and say, hey, you know what? We can do things completely differently now. I think the pandemic really taught us that we could do things completely differently. We all went home and thought, well, how in the heck are you going to run, a business if everybody's working from home? But we figured it out. We tried new things. And, for example, I had never ordered groceries delivered to my house until 2020. Now it's the only way that I do it because it figured out, hey, gosh, that saves me an awful lot of time, and time is money. So, but anyway, that's a digression. But I think we learn a lot from being put into situations that we've never been in before. And then as far as, training and development piece, I really want to try to adopt new technologies, new ways to deliver training that don't require the same old. Let's bring everyone together and sit in a classroom and watch somebody write on the board or whatever. But again, there's a lot to be said for face-to-face, one-to-one. So maybe we do still do hands-on learning and development, but we go to the people that are being trained, people that are receiving the training. With McLaren, I used to have a core team of really skilled technicians that we would send them out as kind of flying doctors to help fix cars that were really difficult. But what we found was they don't have to just go and fix the car. They can also help train the people who are there at the car. So they became teachers and trainers as well as, technicians. So I just think, thinking of something new and trying something new and being forced into uncomfortable situations, it helps us evolve.
Veronica, how about you?
Well, I totally understand the whole AI is taking over everything, but I tend to speak out against AI, unfortunately. I'm not always the
Not
favorite when we're talking AI.
not at all.
I think it's super helpful. Um, but so many people are starting to rely on it, and then they put on the set and forget,
Mhm.
and then you're starting to read through stuff online, you see it in their advertising, and so many people just rely on it. And I find that I think to myself, my gosh, did my grandson write this? Because
Mm,
people forget to go back and edit it, or it feels robotic and it's not, there's that human touch is missing.
Yeah.
We're
yeah, it's a
everyone's
tool, right,
so
Veronica? And you
it,
can't let the tool do the work. We have to use the tool,
yes.
but we can't leave the tool to do the work.
Absolutely. I mean, we use it for note taking and we use it for, getting started on a project. But absolutely, that's the end of it for us. But at the same time, you asked about what other tools do we use for training and education and things like that. We've turned to having some of our tools custom built for us because we are a mentorship platform and we are a training platform. Um, you know, things like that. That's how we're trying to stay ahead. We're not just relying on a out of the box. We bought something, this is what we're going to use. Um, for us to change the narrative, we need to be able to talk to people, get in front of people. We're putting on an annual conference to try and get everyone together, but that's just not enough. So we're also going to have micro events around the country where we're going to try and pull people together. Try and get as many people together in one place or in many places where it's one-on-one. Get back to the human touch. COVID put everybody back in their houses where you didn't get that one-on-one or one-to-many in a location. But I think that's for our industry and what we need from what we provide, not a car service. People need to know that they're not alone and they can lean on other people to learn to provide better service so the end customer is actually taken care of better, which supports the dealership. That the gal that wants to increase her job opportunities has someone to turn to and help her through that process of career development to move up. Or that guy.
Yeah, it's great points, and again, as you were stating, and Randy seconded with the tool cannot become the solution, right? It never is. The people are always going to be the solution. The tool is only there to amplify what they can do. You're absolutely right, Veronica. I look around now and I look on LinkedIn and things, and I see posts, and it's obviously written by AI. You can tell when it's written by AI. And it's a great tool, but it cannot become your journal. AI is not going to actually write for you. It can never, as Randy said, he needs the team to provide the ideas that go to the AI, right? And then you can refine from there.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it gives us suggestions, right? And we decide whether or not we're going to take those suggestions, expand on them, throw them out. So,
right.
And it's funny at NADA, Heather, you're not from automotive, but our largest conference of the year, that was the running joke. How many new AI companies or products or existing products that added AI came to NADA? I mean, you couldn't walk 10 feet without hearing the word AI.
Yeah. Very, very true. And it has its place, but again, it cannot replace the people. Heather, let's round this one out with you.
Well, full transparency, I'm in a completely different industry. I work with very small teams. It's people, every one of our teams has less than 5 people in it. So training and development is relevant, but at a completely different scale than what's been discussed here thus far. I will say, back to storytelling and creativity. Can you believe I'm bringing that up? I think there's a lot to learn from educational content creators who are condensed to explaining things in 60 seconds. So if you go to TikTok, Instagram, and you look up just education and different industries, you can see these really creative ways that people are explaining complex topics and putting it into a story format to make it interesting and consumable. So somebody specifically I was thinking of, I just looked her up, Virginia Kerr. Now she talks a lot about marketing and some pretty complex things about the algorithm and the way that changes that are being made, but she does it all in skits and humor and comedy. I was talking earlier this morning to a woodworker who refinishes furniture, ancient, I mean, beautiful, beautiful pieces. And he walks through, he trains folks on how to do it, and he's using tricks in cinematography. He was using the show The Office as some of the stuff that they do in the office to capture people's attention with their talking heads, transferring that into content. And I know I'm talking, specifically with content creators, but content creators are educators, and so they're training folks on how to do things or different things to adopt. So although our teams are pretty small that we're working with, we're looking heavily at storytellers on how to train folks, how to communicate, and how to share ideas.
Yeah, and that it may be a different industry, but it's still relevant, right? There's
Right,
companies like Rocked within automotive that are doing just that. They're doing shorter form content
Mm-hmm.
in a story type form.
Yes.
Right? It's not a typical standing at a board, writing on a whiteboard.
Well,
Teaching.
even with that, people zooming in on just their hands, because there's an interesting, even shifting something small where I'm not seeing Randy at the board doing this.
Yeah.
I just see Randy's hands with a piece of paper. Just that change of stimulus helps. And it's not that much different. It's just a different angle.
Right. And it's about looking at things differently, right? The old phrase, we've always done it that way, done it this way. That makes me want to rip my eyeballs out every time I hear it.
I thought you were going to say it makes you want to pull your hair out.
Yeah, that happened a long time ago. It's if we don't start to look at things differently, then it will always be the way that we've done it, right? And so those, we can talk about TikTok and Instagram and people's short attention spans and all that, but if you can do things in a creative way and take 30 seconds to a minute and get somebody to remember something, then is that not better than a 4-hour class that they walked out of and don't remember anything because it was just the same old thing?
Right.
I think there's something to be said with creative restriction to see, how do I make this more interesting? A question you can ask is, how can I restrict this? Because then it's going to force me into a perimeter that's going to make it outside of the box. And people say, oh, I'm not creative. And I'm like, well, you will be if you put a parameter around it and you say, I'm going to make a 4-hour training, a 1-hour training, and we're going to do it in a different room. You're sure now going to be creative after that. And so sometimes just asking yourself, what restriction can I place on this to put myself in a box so that I can be innovative is helpful.
It's a great way to see it. All right. So we are going to do our stat of the week now. That is brought to us by Petra Automotive Products, developing the next generation of leaders. Excuse me, is the top challenge for 55% of CEOs, while only 11% of HR leaders feel that they have a strong bench that can take over leadership roles as they open up. And so that begs the question, if the CEOs, the people at the top are realizing that leadership is so important, how do we get to that gap? Which I'll bring that back up, right? Only 11% of HR leaders feel that they have a strong bench. So somewhere we have a gap. The CEOs know that they need to develop leaders, but within that, we're only at 11% that feel they actually do have the bench that is needed. And so segment 3 is brought to us by Automotive Warranty Incorporated. They are a family-owned and operated warranty claims management service based out of Denver, Colorado. For over 30 years, their 300 highly qualified warranty administrators, team leaders, auditors, trainers, and support staff have been processing manufacturer warranty claims. They currently process more than 100 million in warranty per month. You can find them at Automotive Warranty Network Inc. AWNinc.com. And so segment 3, as we talk about qualities of a leader, right? And we think about that stat of the CEOs knowing they need to develop leaders. So what is it that you're doing as leaders to develop the next generation of leaders? Because I think that is really where success is really determined, right? By how many people you create behind you that can also lead at a high level and lead a team. And Veronica, I'll start with you on this.
Thanks, Dave. I actually I think I have a different perspective on this, just simply because of my background. Um, I am not college educated. I have been to college, but I don't have a degree. And I've been in several companies, be it outside the automotive and inside of automotive. And I currently do own a couple of companies. I've owned one since 1992. With that said, I don't say it as a bragging point, but I say it because I think I'm qualified to be in a leadership role. I've proven myself in many different situations. However, I've also been put in situations where people have thought I wasn't qualified. And I think that is a huge problem with a lot of our CEOs today. They look at the letters after your name. They look at what degrees you have. They don't look at the actual qualifications that you have or what your capabilities are and nurture those to see if you are capable or accomplished in what you're able to do. Do you have the heart? You cannot train heart, but if you have it, you can't replace it. And for me, I will always take heart and train everything else to have someone on my team. And if you have loyalty, because you absolutely cannot train loyalty. And if you have both, you have a winning combination. You can train everything else. You can't learn those two things in a college.
I love that. The it do you feel that is the disconnect there, that we're looking too much at, call it pedigree, and not enough at the other maybe more indecipherable qualities?
I think it's a lot of it. I've watched really good companies overlook and lose people because they'll bring in someone from the outside, not promote from within a loyal, caring individual that's more than qualified, all because they want a pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched companies die over culture, not having recognized that people that have been there far too long are the cog in the wheel. Not that they have too much heart, it's just they've been there too long and they at least need a kick in the butt.
It's interesting. I used to work for it was a six dealership group, and the owner of the group used to say that my best employees are my longest term employees, and my worst employees are my longest term employees.
Exactly. And ironically, I have a client now, no names mentioned, obviously, but because of the statement I'll make, their problem on my first meeting, and I asked them, I said, so do you think your issue is a process problem or a culture problem? And they just kind of looked at me and I said, quite honestly, you have a process problem, but you can probably fix your process problem by fixing your culture problem.
Which is more often than not the case.
Yes, absolutely. And as soon as they thought about it, by the next morning, they actually answered and said, yes, you're probably right. So.
All right. And Randy, over to you on this same subject.
Remind me again what the question was, because I wandered around in my head listening to Veronica, and I don't remember what you were asking.
I'm
So-
sorry.
Not at all. It was wonderful. I'm hanging on every word, and I forget what Dave was trying to get us to talk about.
Yeah. So the qualities of a visionary leader
Yeah.
is where we were going with that.
Okay. Yeah. So I look back and I think, one of my favorite quotes, you shared a quote earlier. One of my favorites is, and I'll probably get it wrong, but it's something like, you can get anything you want out of life if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And it was Zig Ziglar that said that way back, probably in the 80s or something. But I think true visionary leaders are people who like helping other people succeed. So if you can just help enough other people be successful, and I I've never considered myself a great leader, a great manager, a great mentor, but every time I've left a company, most of the people on my team have said, "Hey, let us know when you get settled. We'd like to come back and be on your team again." So there's something to it, and I think to Veronica's point, you can't train people to be a good person. You're either a person who cares about people and wants to help people, or you're not. But if you are, and you have the heart that Heather mentioned earlier, if you have that heart, then I think everything else can be learned. All the mechanics of how to lead people can be learned. But those true intrinsic qualities are, you have to have the heart and the will and desire to help people be successful. And then whatever industry you're in, I think you can find your way to become really successful if you're just always focused on. Of course, you've got to keep the vision of the company in mind. But if you just help enough other people be successful, as long as they're aligned with the goals that you're trying to achieve, I think that it gets us there in the end.
That's great. All right, Heather, we're rounding it out with you.
So the original question was around the quote, right? Some folks don't feel like they can step into roles of a
Mhm.
leader. Yeah. Full transparency. This is why I was so drawn to the entrepreneurial space, because not feeling like I had some kind of boundary there was really hard. And I experienced a lot what Veronica has experienced with being discounted for various reasons. I will say that I've noticed like a fear in a lot of leaders, which is understandable, around talented folks on their team who show an entrepreneurial spirit because they're afraid they're going to lose them. And I would just encourage folks to foster that entrepreneurial spirit in people, because although, yes, at some point they probably will leave because they want to start their own thing, what they bring to the table to help you in your vision is just next level. And then when they can feel like what they're bringing to the table is trusted, even though they may not be around forever, their loyalty is going to be so freaking huge. And I've seen there's just this fear around, well, we want to stomp out that and that and that and that because what are we going to lose? That's so short-term thinking, because long-term, what are you going to gain from fostering entrepreneurial tendencies? I'm not saying entrepreneurship. I'm saying entrepreneurial, which is leadership, which is a grittiness, I think, a self-starter piece that people need. And so I say let people go and don't be worried if they are. I think to what Brandy and Veronica both said, if we care about folks, we're going to have their best interest in mind. And if they become better, we become better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, I think maybe people get in automotive, in the dealership world, that they get fearful of that entrepreneur
Sure.
tag, right? Because of what you just said, right? They're going to go do something else. They're going to leave and go do something else. But if you can foster that spirit within them, then they can bring amazing things to your organization, right? It goes back to what we're talking about with visionary leadership, visionary thinking, right? They're looking at things differently than you look at it, than other people who have, to Veronica's point, have been in the business for a long time. Think about it, right? They're looking at things differently. And so removing that fear and actually fostering that entrepreneurial spirit.
It's brave.
You know, yeah, it is. And maybe they do leave. Maybe they do. But what number one, okay, they left. It should be a good for you. You're going out there and trying to take the world, right? But number two, what did they give while they were there? What kind of great ideas were brought into the business and things that changed for the better
Right.
while they were there with your team, right? We need to focus on more of that. And so we are almost at the end here. Another 4 minutes or so to go. What can we do to help others develop into leaders? And I know that could be a very long question. But what are some short steps that we can do to help others to develop into leaders themselves? And Randy, we'll start with you in a minute.
Yeah, I think some of the things we can do is give people an opportunity to do something they're not comfortable with. So I've had people on my team that, for example, were terrified of public speaking. I said, well, let's start small. You give me a presentation. It's just you and me. We're friends anyway, so give me this presentation, and I'll give you some tips and pointers or whatever. Then I want you to go back and rehearse it in front of the mirror, or give the presentation to your husband and kids, or whatever the case might be. But I think give people opportunities to try something they've never tried before, and it's okay, and let them know it's okay if you're not good at it. There's a lot of things I'm not good at, but I either find someone else who is good at it and bring them on the team, or I commit to learning it. So I think we can kind of reverse that and help develop the next generation of leaders by just give them an opportunity to do something challenging, scary, and difficult. Help them through that process and get better at it. And so coaching, I think, is a big part of it, but it's really just specifically setting aside or pushing yourself to give people opportunities. A lot of folks think it's just easier if I do it myself. Well, it probably is easier if you do it yourself, but that's not helping the rest of the people on the team. It's not helping them develop. Right. So I think maybe just push folks to try something uncomfortable. Give them the opportunity and let them know it's okay if you hate it. It's okay if you suck at it, but you get the opportunity and maybe you'll end up liking it.
Excellent. Heather?
Heal yourself, heal your heart, heal your insecurities. I mean, the best way we can empower other people to step up and be better is for us to step up and be better. So do the deep shit work on your own self. And we all say we do that, but it's a continuum. It's never ending. So heal.
Excellent. Veronica?
I think that's twofold. One, if it's for you personally to get on a leadership path, get a mentor. Everyone should have one. There's ways to find them. We do mentoring for men and women, either way. But if it's for your company and you're trying to find leaders and get more leadership within the organization, I would suggest a good business coach for not just your person, but for your team. Because part of it is your person or your team may have some dynamics within that is also hindering that leadership rising to the top.
All great points. Thank you so much, everybody. Heather, Randy, Veronica, we are grateful for the time that you poured into the audience today. We thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our sponsor, Intellicheck, for this week's show. And we will see everyone next week. Again, thank you, everybody. Heather, Randy, and Veronica, thank you so much for being here.
Both, Heather.
Nice meeting y'all too.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Dave.
me.